Welcome to another episode of Katie the Science Lady. I'm Mrs. Jacobson, and today's topic is plant transport and plant structure. So let's learn together. Okay, let's talk about plant structures and transport. So I've kind of put these things together because it's important to think about where we're transporting things inside a plant. So it makes sense to talk about them both together, and that's how we're going to kind of run with this. We're going to start with the plant structure so we have a good idea of what their roles are, and then we'll talk about transportation inside a plant. Now, I know we all feel like we know the parts of a plant, like we know that they have roots and that they have leaves and that they have stems. But sometimes that's kind of the basis of our knowledge and we don't go any deeper. We do need to know what these parts of the plant do and why they're so important to the plant's overall structure and health. Leaves are the main site of photosynthesis. I feel like we've gone over photosynthesis a million times this year, but it's incredibly important. Without photosynthesis, we are not alive because nothing else can eat. So the leaves are where this happens, and this results in food production for the plant. We're making glucose here. So the leaves make the glucose or the sugar that the plant needs to survive. In addition, the leaves allow for gas exchange between the plant and the environment. The plant takes in carbon dioxide, and then it lets out oxygen and water vapor. Now, that oxygen and water vapor, that's a byproduct of photosynthesis. So photosynthesis makes glucose for the plant, and essentially it makes oxygen for us because the plant releases that, it doesn't need it. So we have a picture here of a stoma or stomata in the plant leaf, and these are like pores in the leaf surface. And it's what allows for this gas exchange and allows the plant to regulate water as well. So when the plant loses too much water, these stomata close. When the plant needs to take in more or when it can lose water, it will open them so that gas exchange can occur. But it's one of the ways that plants can keep themselves from drying out too fast. We have a couple of specialized leaf cells, and again, I talked about it just a minute ago. We're going to talk about stomata. They're also called guard cells. So there's a couple of different ways we can talk about them. I've heard stoma, I've heard pores, I've heard stomata, I've heard guard cells. All of those things, all of those terms are talking about the same thing. These holes in the leaf that are going to allow gas and water vapor to enter and leave the plant. So it's really important because it helps a plant regulate itself so that it doesn't lose too much water at one time. So it's really, really important. As we can see in the picture below, this picture over here is actually a microscopic picture of a guard cell. This one is closed over here. This one is open. And the reason this happens is because the big vacuoles inside every plant cell, if they're filled with water, it forms this kind of shape here where we have an opening in between the cells. So when they have lots of water, it can open. And then as those vacuoles get smaller, there's no gap anymore because they get shrunken. And you can see in this picture over here, those guard cells are touching again. So that keeps the plant from losing more and more water out of that stomata or out of that guard cell. So this is super important for regulation. You can see again pictures there. In addition, we have transpiration occurring here, and that is the evaporation of water through the stomata. It's all kind of a similar process. We have gas exchange and water vapor exchange. This is a picture showing the exact same thing that I showed you on the other slide. We have lots of water in our vacuoles here. And when we look at the second picture, there is barely any water at all in these vacuoles. Water in this case, those are actually, I believe they are the red dots. Yes. As far as I can tell, the red polka dots in this picture are water molecules. I know that seems kind of counterintuitive, but that's what's happening here. When there's lots of water, the stomata are open. And when there's a lack of water or the plant needs to conserve or keep water, the stomata are closed. Okay, stems are, this might seem obvious, they're there to support the leaves and flowers. We know that stems are what help plants grow taller to have more access to sunlight, but their job is support. They kind of operate a lot like our bones do. They're there to keep us up, and they also kind of form this the support structure for our bodies, much like they do for the plant. They also allow for transport between our leaves and our roots. So they allow all this plant transport to take place because they act kind of like a highway system between the two. We see a lot of these that are green stems, but the trunks of trees are stems. That might seem kind of crazy because we call them a tree trunk, but they are just a stem that has gotten really, really large, and they have kind of that bark on the outside to protect it from the outside elements. We're going to talk about roots very quickly. Roots' main job is just to absorb water and nutrients from their surroundings. They also store extra glucose that has been made in the leaves. So if you enjoy things like carrots or potatoes or sweet potatoes, those are roots. They are dug out of the ground. So in case you didn't know where potatoes come from, you dig them out of the dirt. They are actually just stored sugar that a plant has made. So potato plants are just really, really large roots, which is kind of crazy to think about. But that extra sugar from the leaves gets sent downwards through the stem to the roots. And that's how they kind of build up there and create those delicious starchy things for us to eat. There are also specialized cells in roots called root hair cells. And these are just going to increase the surface area. And it allows the roots to soak up more water and more nutrients than they normally would. And you can see a picture of them here, all these little tiny projections coming out of the root. The last thing we're going to talk about today is vascular tissue. We have a couple of main purposes for vascular tissue. Its main job is to transport water and dissolved substances. And that usually includes either vitamins and minerals or glucose. So we're transporting water and food, basically. Xylem is going to move upward from the roots where the plant gets water to the leaves. We need water in order to undergo photosynthesis as a plant. So water has to make its way from the soil up through the roots to the leaves. The second type of vascular tissue is phloem. And it's a pH, but it's phloem. And the sugar that's produced in photosynthesis moves down inside the phloem from the leaves to the roots. And again, that's how we get things like carrots and potatoes. This is a picture of xylem and phloem, but I want to take a closer look. When we look at how these operate, we've got xylem moving one direction for the most part, and phloem moving the opposite direction, again, for the most part. If we have a leaf cell at the top here, this green cell, it's producing sugar. And that's going to move into the phloem and then move down towards the roots to kind of get stuck in root cells. That lets the plant store it in case it needs it later. Water is going to be moving up from the roots all the way to the leaves. So the way I remember this, it's kind of silly. Xylem has an XY, and then W comes before X and Y in the alphabet. So water and then XY for xylem would be WXY. It may not help you, but that helps me. So WXY for xylem, water goes with the xylem. And phloem sounds like it starts with an F, which would be food. So I remember that phloem has the food, kind of because it sounds like similar things to me. And that's about it for today.
All right, so let's recap what we've learned today about the main parts of the plant: the stem, the roots, and the leaves. The leaves are the main site of glucose-producing photosynthesis. They are also where gas exchange happens, so where the plant exchanges carbon dioxide for oxygen, where they release oxygen and water vapor. The roots anchor the plant to the soil, and they're also where extra sugar that's made during photosynthesis is stored. Their main role is to absorb water from the soil and nutrients in order to transport it up to the top parts of the plant. The stems themselves act like a highway between the roots and the leaves. And there are two main vascular tissues. We have the xylem, which job is to move water throughout the plant, mostly to move water up from the roots to the leaves. And then we have the phloem, which is to transport plants' food or glucose. And it is mostly moving in the downward direction, going from the leaves where sugar is produced down to the roots where it is stored. All right, and that's it for today. Please like, comment, and subscribe for more biology videos. And as always, I hope you had fun. I hope you learned something, and I'll see you later.